All right, good morning. So today we are going to talk about genetic variation that comes through sexual reproduction. Here are vocab words for today. And the first thing I want to do is review the refined questions from yesterday. So this is kind of a key. You can double check your work. Here is the original gene. And then during transcription, what you do is you use the complementary bases, which are right here, so that you can translate DNA into messenger RNA. So here is the code in messenger RNA. After you do that, you're going to open up the amino acid key, which is this one. And there are two different keys that you can use. You can use the circle version or you can use the chart version. So I personally like the circle version more, so that's the one that I tend to use. So the way that I found this first one, so AUG is my code, and it's METs is what I found. So you're gonna go here. A is this first one right here, U, and then G, and then out, METs. So you're starting from the center and you move outward. Just a reminder, refresher from yesterday. So then after I translated all this, these are my amino acid codes that I use to what is it called? Code for the proteins during protein synthesis. And then our second or refined question has to do with a mutated gene. So this is basically the same, and it's actually in fact is pretty much the same thing as earlier, except if you notice right here, I highlighted the spot that is mutated. So right here, the T replaced the C. So basically, that gives us the stop codon in the middle of our sequence, which is an issue that we'll talk about in a moment. And then the type of mutation that this was substitution because it just replaced the actual letter that it was supposed to be. Nothing extras in here and nothing got deleted. So just substitution. So that's just a wrap up from yesterday, just in case you need to double check your work or if you're still a little bit confused. Let me know if you still need help on that. And then, so what happened with refined question number 2? We saw that the stop codon happens in the middle of the sequence versus the end. So this stop codon should be at the end of the gene to know that that's the end of it. Pretty straightforward there. But because it was in the middle of everything, it's a mutation. It changes the sequence and it creates an incomplete protein. All right, so basically the genetic code just didn't get translated well. And then pretty much here's some memes. So what is the outcome of something like this? Harmful mutations happen whenever, like we started to talk about, whenever something goes wrong with the genetic code. So it's a change in the DNA sequence that results in a different or incomplete protein, which results in disorders or sometimes even death. And then we have cancerous mutations that are passed to daughter cells through mitosis. Remember, mitosis is cell division of tissues and all of those different types of cells. Um, heritable mutations are passed to the sex cells, so through sperm and egg, and it's passed off to the offspring, so the baby. And then beneficial mutation is change in the DNA and resulting protein provides a benefit to the organism. So it's like adaptations, like the ability to digest dairy. And then silent mutation is the change in the DNA sequence that results in the same or very similar amino acid chain and protein. So basically, there is a mutation, but it doesn't disrupt anything. So there are a couple more questions that we need to do for our initial ideas. So how do living things pass on traits? What are two types of reproduction and how do they vary? How much DNA do you share with your parents? That's a big question for today. And how many chromosomes do humans have? How many do we inherit from each parent? So take some time to jot down some answers there. And then afterwards, obviously you don't need to drop in the chat. Let's keep going. So parents pass on traits to offspring through the process of reproduction. Humans and most of the plants and animals you know of reproduce sexually, meaning two individuals combine their DNA to reproduce. Each parent passes on half of their DNA to each child. So you get half from the mom, half from the dad, or it's not always mom and dad, half from the sperm, half from the egg, however you want to view it. And then the DNA or genes you inherit are completely random, which is pretty cool, which is why we have genetic variation, which means differencing in looks and abilities and all those different things. And then we'll talk about that a little bit more. So, reproduction is the process of creating offspring or children through passing on genetic information. We have two different forms of reproduction. The first one is asexual, which is pretty much cloning, kind of cool. It has one parent, and that's all they need. Sexual is mating. So you have two parents. Asexual, one parent. Sexual, two parents. Okay. So asexual, you create daughter cells with just that one parent with cell division. And then sexual, you will have the sperm and the egg, all that whatnot. So asexual reproduction is basically like cloning. You create an offspring that has identical DNA to the parent. Advantages is it's easy, it's independent. Disadvantage is there's no genetic variation. Very, very little. Okay. Different types of asexual reproduction. And then, oh yes, there is a video linked up here that talks about more about asexual reproduction if you want to know about that. And then sexual reproduction is the creation of offspring by the combination of gametes, so sex cells, from two parents of the same species. Advantages here are genetic variation. Disadvantage, mating is very difficult. And then sexual reproduction, biggest thing is that it requires fertilization. So gametes are sex cells with half of the genetic material as normal cells. So again, the sperm and the egg. And then, for your word part practice, we have this word haploid. So haploids are sex cells in humans. They have 23 chromosomes. And then zygotes are a combination of two gametes. So the sperm and the egg. So then we have 46 chromosomes because 23 plus 23 or 23 times 2, whatever you want to do, equals 46. And then here are the basics on chromosomes. Each human, this is human numbers, gets 23 chromosomes from each parent. So 23 from the sperm, 23 from the egg to give us a total of 46. So these pretty much are the layout of our chromosomes. The last one, X and Y, will determine the gender of said baby. So X and Y is a male, XX is female. So there are two copies of each chromosome, which we can see right here. And then genes are carried on the chromosomes. Each chromosome carries a different set of genes and DNA. And then 22 autosomal chromosomes, so same from mom and dad. And then one sex chromosome, which is chromosome 23. So here is a podcast on more information about biological sex versus gender. You can look at that later. Biggest thing that you want to know when you think about sex and gender when we're talking about biology is that the word sex refers to a male or female based on your biological determination of your sex, based on your chromosome. So that's chromosome 23. So this is pure genetics. And then XX is biologically female. XY is biologically male. So we're just talking about in humans right now. And then the word gender refers to your identity as a man or a woman or something outside of those constraints. Non-binary. We know that people identify as so many different things nowadays, which there's no right or wrong answer for that, because things are not black and white with either sex or gender, because even biologically, sometimes things happen that get really, really confusing. 2% of humans are intersex or they don't fit into categories of biological sexes, male or female, due to the differences in chromosomes. Remember, genetic variation. Things happen. Even more humans experience a gender different than their biological sex, and there are many representations of gender identity. So, again, no real right or wrong answer for that. And then your refined task. Oops, as I am working on this, I noticed mistake. Your refined task number 3 is to use the information that we just learned to fill this out. So you inherit blank copies of each chromosome from your mother and blank copies from your father, leaving you with blank copies of each chromosome. Each parent passes down blank chromosomes, leaving you with a total of blank chromosomes in all of your cells. So then I actually have answers for you. And again, let me fix this because, you know, just the way life works sometimes. So as you can see, there are answers, like I was saying. So you inherit one copy of each chromosome from your mother and one copy from your father, leaving you with 2 copies of each chromosome. And then each parent passes down 23 chromosomes, leaving you with a total of 46 chromosomes in all of your cells. All right. And then your siblings do not inherit the exact same genes as you, which is why sometimes siblings don't look the same. Sometimes siblings look a lot alike, sometimes they don't. Not even twins have identical genes. Although you and half or full siblings are inheriting genes from the same parents, the assortment of traits that gets passed on to you is random and varies greatly, which is why there is so much variation between siblings. Pretty much what I said. And then the only exception would be identical twins splitting of fertilized zygotes. And then how do we make these haploid cells? Meiosis. So last week we learned about mitosis, which is also a cell division process. This week it's meiosis, which is the process of cell division where 4 haploid, so 4 gamete sex cells are made. Okay. Consists of 2 stages in cell division. We have meiosis 1, which there are 2 cells that get created. Meiosis 2, which 4 cells get created, which you can see right here. 2 cells, 4 cells. And then 4 cells per cycle creates many combinations of different traits. So here are more videos on meiosis that you can take a look at on your own time. Again, it's the process of cell division to create 4 haploid sex cells. Does not mean 4 babies are made, just the sex cells. All right. So more information here if you would like to learn more about it in depth. Oops. No. How was this? Okay. So how or why, sorry, start here. Why do we want genetic variation? We'll talk about it a little bit more once we come back in quarter 4 and talk about evolution and selection. But pretty much we want diversity. Clear and simple, genetic variation creates diversity. So if you look at these potatoes, it's a difference between the same type of potatoes and different potatoes. And then the meiosis is the origin of genetic variation because meiosis with the cell division creates many different combinations of traits, even though they're being inherited from the sperm and the egg. And then there are 3 major ways that genetic variation increases through meiosis. Random fertilization during sexual reproduction, so a baby is made. Crossing over, so recombination of chromosomes, independent assortment of chromosomes, and then mitosis, clone cells, aka asexual reproduction. So that's, remember, creating all those different cells that have functions within our body that helps our body grow. So think about mitosis as helping you grow from a little baby to what you are now. Meiosis is essentially your creation of why you look the way you look and other things. So sources of genetic variation, we have, again, random fertilization during sexual reproduction. During fertilization, the gametes the gametes from each mate that ends up meeting do so completely randomly. And then, although there is a selection in which um, and who each individual mates with, the female doesn't choose which egg is released, and the egg doesn't get to select which sperm gets fertilized or fertilizes it. So there's the randomization. Just randomly happens. And then genetic variations in meiosis have to do with the crossing over of homologous chromosomes. So homo means same, so it's like the same type of chromosome. During prophase one, homologous chromosomes match up and swap portions of chromosomes, creating recombinant chromosomes. So if you look right here, we have one from the sperm, one from the egg. They start to cross over, and boom, combinations start happening. So third, independent assortment of chromosomes is during meiosis, chromosomes will line up with their homologous chromosomes arranged in a variety of different ways. So instead of crossing over, they start to line up and then just basically randomly get mixed around to create different combinations. And then if you look here, this number of chromosomes and the number of possible gametes starts to duplicate extremely large potential variation from human to human. Pretty crazy. And then your refined task number 4 is describe one way genetic variation comes from sexual reproduction. So explain what that means with detail. So you can choose random fertilization, crossing over, or independent assortment. Just make sure you explain it into detail. And to help you further explain and understand, remember there are videos as well as this reading linked in here. And here is a sentence frame that can help you out. So keep in mind that tomorrow is Wednesday and you will be working on um, any of the things on this EQ tracker that you've missed, any missing work, question of the week, as well as your disease and disorder project, because that is going to be due very, very soon. All right, let me know if you need any help.